The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All righty, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this meeting of the Legislative Committee to order. I'll start by calling the roll. Mr. Massey?
Here.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Mr. Tobin?
Here.
And Alderwoman Ray texted me a little bit earlier. She's feeling under the weather, so she will not be joining us, and she extends both her regards and her apology. Nonetheless, we're ready to work. We have 3 things on our agenda, all touching in some way or another on behavior modification, I suppose. We'll start off with the one that talks about rental inspections. Counselor, are you ready to prep us on that?
Yes, sir. So the purpose of this is to put a little, the word is pressure or a little punishment on people who, and there are a few of them now, we go out to inspect and they don't show up, or they show up at some point and we have to go back and re-inspect, and we have to go back and re-inspect again and again because there's still violations. So it was the commissioner's idea to create a fee that when you start with the 3rd inspection, you can't get it done in 2. The 3rd one, there's going to be a $50 fee. And it's really as simple as that. And it's just to discourage people from, not showing up for inspection appointments. And I think you have to remember that it's not just the property owner that can do this. I mean, one of the things we require on rental permits, if you don't live around here, and even if you do, you can have a property manager. If you live, I think it's more than 10 miles from the city, you have to have a property manager. And one of the purposes of having a property manager is to appear for inspection. So it's not like you're, creating a hardship for people who may be ill or out of town or something like that. They have people that we have told them they have to use for these kinds of things. And it's not being done. And what I've heard from some of the code enforcement officers is oftentimes it's 5 or 6 inspections, and there's a couple that we've had to take to court simply because we can't issue a rental permit because we can't get in for an inspection. So it's a $50 fee, and then that's for the 3rd inspection, and after that, if there's a 4th and any further inspections, it's a $100 fee. And it's in our code. It doesn't go to court. It's not a court violation or something like that. It's just an extra fee laid out for these people who don't get it done the first 2 times.
Okay, behavior modification number 1, please pay attention to rental inspections. I'll go around the table. Committee of the Whole, Alderman Kleiner, any questions or comments?
No questions.
Mr. Green?
No questions.
Alderman Witt?
No questions.
Mr. Massey?
No, I'm all in favor of it. Maybe we can get that money and use it for bulk pickup.
Yeah, that would be great. Nothing like a dripping faucet. President Rodriguez? Mr. Tobin? Mr. Jean-Francois? Okay. So as far as the committee, I'm sorry?
Am I here? Did you invite me to just listen to you, or?
Oh, Mayor DeStefano, would you care to weigh in on this
Yes, I would.
topic? Thank you.
Listening to Mr. Tawil's comments, or?
I thought his comments
Mr.
were-
Tawil's proposal. One complaint we do get from the people who do miss appointments is that there's no electronic verification system here for appointments. And they claim, quite a few people, that the inspectors show up at times that were not agreed upon. So how are we going to verify? How are we going to address, what's that?
There's an appeal. No, I'm sorry.
Oh, how are we going to address that where there's no confirmation? Mr. S told me I had an appointment on Friday at 10 o'clock, and he showed up at 11 o'clock. Where is the, are we going to be giving written confirmations, or how are we going to do it
Okay, well,
administratively?
I gathered from Council's opening remarks that this was proposed by the Commissioner of Public Works. Is that correct?
Yes.
Would you care to answer the mayor's question as to scheduling of these appointments and their surrounding controversy or confusion?
Yeah, there is always going to be a challenge, and I was hoping that we could have, but it's up to Alex, we usually, everywhere, we have an appeal process, and that, I think, will take care of the mayor's concerns. So, You know, if the inspector says something, the other guy says something, then there is an appeal. Usually you come to the commissioner or you come to the mayor and you can appeal that, hey, this guy is picking on me or whatever.
Well, how does it work today?
Right now, we just keep going.
If I'm the property manager, how do I set up this appointment? Or you call me and say it's time for inspection?
Oh, no, when there's a violation, we right there, we said, when can you get this thing done? When I'm inspecting your house, you say, give me a week. Okay, when do you want me to come back? I have my notepad in there, which is electronic device. You put it in there, okay, I'll be back next week. You want me back next week? Yes, next week. Sometimes there are circumstances where people, you know, there is death, there is some circumstances in there, so I think there's some kind of use of discretion,
Okay.
if really it's legitimate or not. So I spoke to the code enforcement officers about it. I don't know if that translated into Alex's resolution about some kind of discretion, because God forbid there's death. Sometimes there is some circumstances in there beyond their control, which the inspector can understand. So hopefully there's going to be some discretion and some means of appeal. And that's what I had in mind, because all the time, like the mayor said, Dr. Johnson says, well, he's lying. The other guys say, no, he's lying. And
Well, vis-à-vis the mayor's comments, is there actually written communication via email?
That's what I was gonna say. The ones I have all seen that have come to my attention, there's been emails sent to the property owner.
Oh, yeah.
Saying that your inspection is this date.
That was my question, as how are we confirming appointments so that there's no, Mr. Tawil was like a little filibuster here, where he never really got to the issue, is
What?
they come next week. You know, we're gonna come next week and make an appointment. Well, what's the appointment? Who made the appointment? What day, what time?
Well, they made it this, it
And
sounded.
so now we're going to have an appeal of a $50 or $25 fine, whatever it was, and the guy has to take off work to come to a hearing for an appeal. It's not, I don't think it's the right way to do it unless there's some written confirmation of the appointment. And that way, I don't get a phone call saying that Inspector A is not telling the truth, or there was some confusion, maybe it was confusion on one of the inspector's behalf. And now we're going to force these people to come back into a hearing. I don't agree with that. I'm not trying to be a softie on it. I want a process set up where there is some type of verification. Either, it could be a third party, it could be the secretary confirming on the phone. It could be, I just don't want a he said
Gotcha.
kind of appointment made where it creates a problem.
Well, I think we all agree in this day of email, it's fairly easy to have written confirmation of something.
yeah, there are written confirmation of the appointment. It's not just, you know, okay, I'll see you Thursday, and then, okay, I'll see you Thursday.
Okay.
There is a written correspondence and written confirmation in our computer system, and if that doesn't exist, then there is no appointment. Absolutely. And many times, we send you the appointment in the mail, and we send it first class, and you never received it. So, oh, I didn't see it. What are you talking about?
Gotcha. Counselor, would you care to clarify?
Yeah, I agree with the mayor. I don't agree with an appeal process, and I think, I assume there was a written confirmation, and to answer Jacob's last point, if DPW sends something in the mail and it's not returned, under New York law, it's presumed that it's been received.
Without any receipt requested.
Correct.
But I think you're assuming that all these appointments are confirmed by mail.
Or,
they're not.
or email. I am.
And they're not.
Well, then they should be. You know, that would be,
That's my point.
that would be the simple way to do it.
Absolutely should.
Okay, do we need to codify that with language in this resolution, or how should we proceed?
I think you should proceed with any appointment that is confirmed by mail or email and is missed. Then the penalty can kick in.
And you would like to see that as language in this resolution?
I would, because.
Okay.
Then the burden is on the inspector to follow through with having the secretary send out the email, or doing it themselves, or sending out a mailing. And then we have proof of it. When someone comes and complains to Alderman Johnson, then they have that documentation. Here's the email that was sent to you on such and such date. The appointment was set, you never responded.
All right, so written confirmation by mail or
Understood.
email.
And I apologize for not soliciting your input, Mayor.
Well,
I'm going to go around the table once more in reverse order with this clarification. Mrs. Jean-Francois?
On the reverse side, if the inspector can't make it also, so they have to reach out to
yeah, then we have to cancel.
Mr. Tobin, anything else?
Good point.
No, I assume there was some kind of record.
Assumptions, that's what gets us in trouble. President Rodriguez? Mr. Massey?
You need verifiable notification, especially if you're going to end up in court.
Verifiable notification, sounds good. Mr. Witt?
Just a question now, do we give them an exact time, or is there like a 2-hour range?
My understanding is an exact time.
Thank you.
Mr. Green?
Nothing to say that hasn't been said, so.
Mr. Kleiner?
No, I just was assuming there was some kind of written notice verification.
Okay. All righty, do the members of the committee approve as discussed? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose or abstain? Thank you. Carries out of committee. The next item for consideration, I would like to present the conversation about the false alarms and faulty alarm systems. Who's going to talk about that? Is that you, Counselor?
I'll start, sure.
Okay.
This comes as a request from the fire chief advising me that there are quite a lot of situations where false alarms are coming in which obviously the fire department has to respond to, and it is a result of a faulty alarm system. So the suggestion made by the chief, and according to the fire department, it happens sometimes frequently with the same system. So the suggestion of the chief is that after the first such false alarm, and when I say such false alarm, because it's a systemic false alarm, the fire department, the chief, or the fire inspector will issue a written warning to the owner or the tenant of the property to take action to correct the system, to correct whatever was causing the false alarm. If the property generates another false alarm after the issuance of that warning, it can be an offense punishable by an appearance in court with a fine, possible jail sentence, because we don't want to be in a situation where we can't issue a warrant. And the fine I put in here is not less than 100 nor more than 500. Of course, here we do have written warnings, and it obviously is discretionary with the chief or the fire inspector on whether or not to file a charge in the court.
Okay, could you possibly clarify what you mean by severability, what that means exactly?
You mean severability? Oh, you mean at the bottom here?
I asked you that.
Oh, that's a common comment that if the court finds anything wrong with any clause or part of this, it will not invalidate the entire ordinance.
Okay,
We put that in a lot of our ordinances to avoid a possible challenge in court, which invalidates some part of an ordinance, but we don't want it to immediately invalidate the whole ordinance.
President Rodriguez, would you
Yeah,
care to question or
I'm
comment?
not comfortable with after the first alarm. Some businesses call their alarm company, sprinklers break, and it will trigger another alarm. And this can go down, we had Liberty Street, which is the YMCA, it went off 5 times a day. So this can trigger the fines. And they were trying to get the vendor to fix the sprinkler, fix the fire alarm, fix everything. We disconnected the alarm. We said you have to have a fire watch. You have everything. This right here goes down, after the first alarm.
Well, but after a first alarm and a written warning.
I mean, they'll give them the written warning on the scene. I mean, that's, if it happens on a Friday night, good luck trying to find a vendor to come in over the weekend, to come in, fix the problem, have the parts for the sprinkler system when there's cold days or whatever, and then come in and fix it. Yes, I hate to say it, but it's going to happen again, or it's going to happen where the alarm trips something else, and then they have to go out there. The second time, then or sometimes it happens 7 times over the weekend.
Well, like I said, it's up to.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's up to you folks and the fire chief.
I'm not comfortable with the first warning. I think, you got to give some discretion. I understand if
There
they
is
don't fix it.
It does say, in their discretion, may issue a warning
Hey,
in that third line of the document. So the fire chief or fire inspector, in their discretion, may issue a written warning to the owner or leasee of any property generating a false alarm to take immediate action to correct. So does that cover it in your mind? If you come to me, I say, look, I called the vendor, he can't come till tomorrow morning, then you would say, okay, you are taking care of it. Does that meet your expectations?
sometimes there's issues where It's not that easy. You know, it depends on the system.
I mean, Miguel, there's really two levels of discretion here. One is what Dr. Johnson just mentioned. The second one is if there's a written warning and another faulty alarm, the fire chief or the fire inspector do not have to bring charges. They have discretion whether or not to bring charges.
All right, Mr. Mayor, would you care to comment?
I'm going to pick up where Miguel left off is, if the property owner can demonstrate that they've retained a repair person, then I think we have to show a little patience with people, because as he says, you know, I know my wife's business, there was a float in the sprinkler, and they couldn't get it right, but the sprinkler guy was there 3 or 4 days in a row, but they kept going off, and we had to disengage the alarm. But the point being is that there's a difference between a malfunction and a false alarm. Malfunction, the system's gone bad, and you're trying to, and you can demonstrate that you're trying to get it repaired, then I don't think it should be the chief's discretion. I think it should be automatic that you're given an extension of time, rather than leaving it up to the discretion of 1 or 2 individuals. So I would like to see that into the law itself, where if the property owner can demonstrate or prove that they have retained a company and the company is actively working on the system, that they would automatically be given an additional, some additional time. That additional time would have to be worked out between the chief and or the fire inspector and the company, how much time is necessary. I'm not saying months and years. I'm saying, as he says, it could be on a Friday night where you can't get anybody till a Monday or Tuesday. So some type of language in the law.
So one of the concepts he's presented is malfunction versus false alarm. I'll go around the table, starting with Mr. Massey.
It's categories.
I
It's
believe
categories
that-
as false alarm, not a malfunction.
Okay.
I believe between the fire inspector and the fire chief, their discretion, obviously, if something happens that the mayor just mentioned, that they're professional enough not to automatically take them to the next level, that they would understand that, and it's their expertise. So I don't think there should be put anything in there that says automatically. I like the idea that it's still at the discretion of, and go from
You
there.
like the language the way it's
I
been
like the
presented?
language the way it is.
Okay, Mr. Witt, I'll get to you.
So my question is, is this 2 or 3 businesses that is causing this problem, or is it 40?
Well, certainly the chief is often referred to
Right,
false alarms and how many
right, but-
percent of the calls are false alarms.
47% of the calls last year were either false alarm or malfunctions of 1,000 calls. But that, like I said, that doesn't mean that they are all false alarms.
right.
Somebody pulling the alarm. A system could malfunction,
Right.
and that goes into that 47% category.
Mm-hmm.
And to go to Mr. Massey's comment about discretion, the law should never be discretionary on behalf of whether it's the chief or the assistant chief or the deputy chief or the chief responding, on behalf, the acting chief for that day, the duty chief, or any of those things. The law should be specific that, so again, it doesn't come back to us and say, hey, Chief A was on that night, and him and I don't have, we don't get along. And all of a sudden I get a referral, but the guy next door, when his alarm went off, somebody gave some discretion to him. I don't think the law should be written that way. I think it should be pretty clear that if you're engaging someone, that you should have an opportunity, the same opportunity as I do or you do, to do the correction. And if you don't correct it, then you have an issue. Or if you don't retain somebody, then the discretion for the chief to kick in should be there. But I don't think it's appropriate to give any type of discretion where you could be treated differently than I can be treated on a black and white issue. Of malfunction to malfunction. If Paul Johnson doesn't have to do it, why do I have to do it?
Understood. Mr. Green?
I see both sides of it. It's an interesting point to bring up because there are circumstances where businesses or buildings, even residences, are having construction done. And at that point, there is test modes for alarms. If they fail to put it in a test mode and the fire department is called out a second or a third time in a weekend or a day, I can see there being cause after the first time to give a written warning. Then maybe on to the next one. I think there are some businesses that you might visit twice in 1 week. You know, maybe the first time, okay, we'll give it to you, you know, it's a problem. The second time, if it's called in again and you haven't shown that, you know, we have someone coming in, you've got that issue as well. It is tough to get people out, especially on a weekend night. So I think that either we can look at it as, you know, after the first offense or upon the second false alarm, you can issue one perhaps. Just because I'd hate to see a business, even if it's 1 week apart, I'd hate to see restaurant A, you know, on Monday the 1st has a false alarm because, you know, they were cooking. Then the next week on the 8th, they have another false alarm because they were cooking. You know, that would tell me that, okay, maybe I'll write them a written one that time and say, you know, maybe you should look at relocating this or that, you know, this sensor or this, you know. I just think that discretion is a tough term here, I guess is the point.
Okay.
When we flush hydrants,
Yeah.
we set the alarms
Yes,
off for the
absolutely,
business.
absolutely.
But we're gonna start writing them up because we
And
flush.
don't forget, you're not only dealing with businesses.
There is-
Point
there-
of order, I
but
need
that's
one
the part of
person talking
distract-
at a time, and that, at this moment, means nobody. Thank you. Mr. Green, continue.
I was just gonna say that's part of the discretion, I believe. If we set it off knowingly, if they can prove that we flushed a hydrant, we were doing hydrant flushing in that
Explain that to the
ward,
chiefs that are not elected yet, when they read this law.
well, then I say what we should do is then state that it should be either chief of the department, chief engineer of the department, or the fire inspector. Don't make it an assistant chief, or, so that way it lays solely on two people, our fire inspector, who already goes into these businesses supposedly, and they're supposed to, and, you know, checks out systems and that, or leave it to the discretion of the chief of the department only. Don't allow an assistant chief then who could have a differing opinion from the head
What's
chief.
the big deal of letting the business, we go into buildings that it says PN alarm and it's somebody from California. We don't even know.
Well, it's not only businesses either. I think you guys all.
Well, yeah, this
be
is
how-
No,
residences
listen,
as well.
you guys are going to get the calls
Yeah.
because most homes now,
Yeah.
not most, but quite a few homes have alarms.
Right.
So when we tell the homeowner that Alderman so-and-so is the one that supported no discretion, then we'll refer them to you guys. I mean, I think it's a pretty simple thing. If you're going to show that everyone's being treated equally, and that if someone's making an effort, and they've retained the company to fix it, what do you want the person to do? Do you want them to leave the house? Do you want them to shut their business? And this is not like we're getting 10 calls a day. You're getting a false alarm. Is it a false alarm Monday? And if they get another false alarm on Wednesday, what is that? What's the timeline?
Then maybe we should stipulate a period of time.
Why not just?
Did you,
What?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I think, unless I didn't hear you correctly, which obviously we know that I have.
You have hearing issues,
All
yes.
right. You contradicted yourself.
What?
Are you not in favor of having someone or two people having discretion?
No, I'm in favor of putting in the law.
Not in favor of discretion, the word discretion.
You said
No.
a minute ago-
I'm not in favor. I'm in favor of putting in the law that if the chief decides that it's a false alarm or a malfunction, whatever definition they want to have, and that the company demonstrates to the city that they have retained a company to correct the problem. It could be the float in the sprinkler
Okay,
system,
okay.
something like that. That we don't have any business finding that business. They're already going after. They're already paying a huge penalty by having a company there spending thousands of dollars, probably in some cases, to correct the issue.
But Joe,
At some
these
point,
guys are professionals.
who's a professional?
Well, we got a fire inspector that hopefully is a professional.
But you're not
We've
giving
got
your.
chiefs.
So,
That's where it lies. The decision should lie there.
so
These
the,
people.
Gentlemen,
You're making.
No,
an
you're
argument
wrong,
for
you're wrong.
1 in a million
Gentlemen.
cases.
No, it's not 1 in a million,
Point
because
of
you're not
order.
familiar, you're not familiar with the systems.
point of order. I've clearly lost control of this committee meeting. I clearly unanticipated it would be more than 15 minutes. So I apologize to anybody who is losing their patience with this conversation. Counselor, what would you like to say?
Well, I have to disagree with the mayor in part here. Every day, the code enforcement officers for DPW issue violations, notices of violations, and the excuse they often get, and the excuse I often get in court, hundreds of them. Well, I called my contractor's coming over, he's in the process of doing this and that and the other thing. And every day, every week, code enforcement officers have to decide, are they acting in a timely fashion? Are they acting appropriately? You can't put something in that's just automatic. Well, if they've contacted somebody, it's automatic. You can't do that, because otherwise you might as well not even have the law. There's no sense
I'll
of it.
respond to Mr. Smith.
Okay,
I'm not
gonna-
done yet.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, finish up.
Mr.
So
Mayor, you weren't
I
actually
think you have
recognized
to
at this
leave
moment.
it to discretion, because code enforcement officers, police, they all have discretion. They have discretion on whether or not to issue violations. This is what we hired them for. This is what they have to do. I mean, I understand what the mayor's saying about you want to treat people equally, and I agree with it. But discretion means you're operating under certain principles that you're used to, your experience. You have experience to know what takes time, what doesn't take time. You have experience to know whether somebody is acting appropriately, doing it quickly enough, doing it promptly enough, and whether or not somebody is giving you a story about contacting contractors. And it operates in every facet of our law enforcement. People get mad, well, I just got a ticket from that state trooper, but 5 other guys just went by here and they were going just as fast as I. Why don't you give them tickets? Why me? And you know what the state trooper will say? I have discretion to arrest you, and I just did, and I can prove that you're wrong.
And you're absolutely missing the point. The point is that when it comes to a technical thing like a sprinkler system, where you have to bring a licensed person in to make the corrections on your system or your alarm system, that especially in a business where these businesses sign up, like there are annual permits that we issue to the business. And we have to make sure that they're inspected on an annual basis. So we inspect. The private companies do the inspections also. And I didn't say to just say I called somebody. I said to prove that they've called somebody. This is not like it's a 10 times a day these things are happening. So if it's happening at the promenade, and the promenade shows proof to the inspector that they have contacted the Sullivan County Sprinkler, and Sullivan County Sprinkler will be here on Monday morning to address the issue, why in the hell would we want to violate the promenade?
Okay.
It makes no sense.
What?
And it should be as easy as that, simple as black and white, not discretion.
Right.
It's not.
Contrary to popular opinion, I'm still in charge of this committee meeting. So I'm going to revert to my old school board days. I'm going to continue around the table. Apologize to the president. If you have anything new or compelling to add to this conversation, you're more than willing to speak. And if you're going to reiterate, I would beg that you not do that. Alderman Kleiner, this is your first opportunity to speak on this issue.
Thank you. I'm not on the legislative committee, but I would like to hear from Chief Barber, because it was at his urging and his complaining about the number of false alarms that we're presenting this legislation and we're talking about this issue. So I would like to get his opinion on, are there chronic violators? Are there people intentionally ignoring the calls? What is it that he thinks we should be doing here?
Understood. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, we have a committee of 4 as legislative, but by my protocol, I like to treat it as a committee of the whole. Alderman Jean-Francois, be careful. Thank you. Mr. Tobin.
Yeah, I worked with Alex and the chief on this, and the chief is worried about the chronic people or the people that are blowing smoke. They're saying, I'm gonna get it fixed. And you have to keep on, our volunteers are having to get dressed, leave whatever they're doing, drive the truck over, and it's a false alarm. And the guy's like, it's happening repeatedly. And 47% is a big number. And so we're trying to bring that down. So, and basically give these guys a slap on the wrist so they say, all right, they'll get it fixed. But I do understand what the mayor's saying. Perhaps maybe it could be like, if you have a taillight out and you get you have a certain amount of time to fix it, and if you get it fixed within that time, maybe the fine will be removed, like maybe something like that. Like you prove that you fixed it in 2 weeks or something, you can go get it taken away or whatever.
Well, I appreciate the spirit of the discussion. I'm going to offer a remedy. We'll see how it goes. Speaking to the members of the committee, I'm looking for a motion to table pending clarification. Mr. Massey?
So moved.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Tobin?
What's the clarification?
All of the above that we've talked about,
Right.
and myself. So the committee of four, we've all agreed as a motion to table, and we'll put it back in the hopper. We'll consult with the chief. The chief will talk to the mayor will talk to the councilor, and we'll come back to it at an appropriate date and see if we find something that we find mutually acceptable. And I apologize, I have one more thing, Mr. President.
I know.
The last one is an issue regarding the cannabis laws, and I'm going to ask Councilor and then certainly the mayor to clarify what we're doing compared to what we did in the spring of '22.
Well, this was actually at the urging of the mayor that I drafted this. So the simple purpose here is to give the city the ability to enforce the fact that we opted out of the legislation. The opt-out means that the state board cannot issue dispensary licenses to people to operate in the city of Middletown. That's fine. That's the opt-out. This takes that a little bit further. If you do operate here without getting a license, we, the city, will have the ability to bring you to court as a violation of our zoning ordinance. So it adds to the opt-out.
Now, prior to the meeting, Mr. Tobin was seeking clarification. Would you care to pose your question?
I thought we opted out of like the THC, like the legal marijuana, the adult use cannabis, but then I see like CBD made from hemp is like, I think federally legal. I mean, I think you can get it at a gas station, but this says hemp extract, some cannabis infused products. I mean, I think the smoke shops all are selling CBD all throughout the city. Like, would that mean they could sell the
Well,
CBD or?
I took these specific terms from the cannabis law. This is what we opted out of.
Oh,
And
everything?
This is what's prohibited from being sold.
Right.
That's the purpose of
But I
of the
thought
city
even prior to
opting out.
this, CBD, which is made from hemp, which is less than, I think, 0.3% of THC, not psychoactive, that was legal, like.
Yeah,
if you had
that's
decided-
excluded. See,
That's excluded,
I got
okay.
these terms directly from the state cannabis law as it was first issued. So, and I said in here, we're using the definitions from the New York cannabis law. We're not using our own definitions or something different. We're using the definitions from the cannabis law.
All right,
We opted out from the board giving licenses to people to sell these specific things in the city of Middletown.
Originally, I was in favor of the adult use cannabis, but recently I've seen the uptick in students actually ODing from taking gummies and stuff, and I think the state hasn't got their act together like I guess everybody thought it would, or maybe thought would or would not happen, and I do have a problem with their enforcement. And, I see kids as early as middle school, taking way too much stuff, and it's dangerous and happens in other schools too. So I've changed my position on that. I don't think we're ready for adult use cannabis sales in the city. But prior to that, I was supportive of. I'm in support of adult use cannabis, but not student cannabis or any children having access to that. And I think that the way the state rolled it out, it's all over the place. It's like a free for all, and I think it's dangerous at this point. So, just want to add that.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, would you care to comment?
2 minutes.
Well, I think everything we said during the public hearings came true.
Right.
About the state not being ready and about all the implications that would come from this. And if you've had the opportunity to go to New York City recently. Over the last few months, you would see firsthand the problems that it's caused, and it's going to continue to cause problems. But the chief probably would be better to address the enforcement side, and the reason why we're making these changes. These are things that we've been monitoring, especially with gas stations and some of the tobacco shops. We've made some raids on these places, and believe me, it's not just CBD, or I don't know all the terminology related to it, but it's actual marijuana in many places, and there's no distinguishing between the two, and unless you go to a lab, and so, Chief, can you just come up and address it, because he's much more in tune to with the legal part.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Chief, thank you.
So good evening. As a Corporation Counsel and the Mayor mentioned, we're looking for an enforcement arm of this. There's been nothing on the state level. As the Mayor mentioned, we've done investigations into commercial establishments that are selling over the counter, running it through the registers, acting like it's just a candy bar. They're selling it, they're advertising it and displaying it for children. It's unacceptable. We've gone through the steps that the state has asked us with the Cannabis Control Board Investigative Unit. There's no response. They created a link, we put the information in, they want us to do all these steps, but there's no return, there's no response on that. I don't think they have it set up yet, and here we are, our community is suffering at the hands of that. So we need some type of enforcement arm to stop this. The council voted to not allow the sales, but because there's no enforcement of it, people are just doing whatever they want. And if we don't do something, it's just gonna get worse and worse and worse.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. So just to be clear, I apologize, Mr. President. Just to be clear, this resolution, the language is as follows. The sale of cannabis, cannabinoids, cannabinoid hemp, cannabis flower, cannabis products, cannabis-infused products, hemp extract, as those are terms defined under, as Counselor indicated, Section 3 of New York Cannabis Law, is prohibited in and on all private and public property in every zoning district in the city of Middletown. That's the essence of what we're voting on or talking about. I will continue to go around the table, and I'll start with Mr. Witt.
I agree with this.
Thank you for your brevity, much appreciated. Mr. Green?
On board.
Thank you. Mr. Kleiner?
No, I think it's clear.
Thank you. Mr. Jean-Francois?
Move forward.
Mr. Tobin?
I agree, totally need an enforcement part of it.
President Rodriguez?
Agree.
So, to the members of the committee, are you in favor? Mr. Massey?
Thank you.
That was inadvertent. It was not part of the conspiracy theory.
You're doing his bidding now?
I clarified that on the record. Thank you.
But no, I'm totally in favor.
Oh, I am getting in so much trouble in 45 minutes. It's amazing. All right, for the members of the committee, are you in favor to move this forward to the council as a whole? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Motion carries. We will have a motion from the floor later to schedule a public hearing on this topic. Thank goodness the committee meeting is over. Motion to adjourn. Thank you so much. All in favor, none opposed. We're adjourned.